Well, June's got a reputation for a reason, doesn't it? We always say that June's the big month for recruiting. We talked about it all last week. Certainly talked a lot about it on the live show on Wednesday night. Talked a lot about it on the Thursday edition of the Morning Pit. And, throughout the week on the message boards. I mean, we wrote about everything was leading up to this past weekend as, setting up to be a huge recruiting weekend. You see a big chunk of Pitt's recruiting class come together this weekend. It was all going to happen. And that prediction came true. Our predictions don't always come true, but this was an easy one. And we sure did get this right. And it might have even exceeded our expectations. Pitt landed 10 commitments over the weekend as of this recording. And we recorded this last night, of course. We recorded this Sunday night, as we do these ahead of time. But 10 commitments as of this recording. And as of this recording, 9 of those 10 have been revealed. We think we have an idea about who that 10th one is, but that's on the message board. You can go check that out. But 10 new commitments, 9 of them have been revealed. Pitt's recruiting class didn't just grow. It didn't just double. It tripled over the course of this official visit weekend. The Panthers came into this weekend with 5 commits in the 2026 recruiting class. They're leaving the weekend with 15. Tripling the size of the class. You don't usually have that happen. As a matter of fact, even though there have been huge June recruiting weekends in the past, this one's shaping up to maybe have been the biggest one. I actually have to do a little bit of research. I know one of those first ones way back in June of 2018, that Father's Day Massacre, as I've come to calling it. Pitt ended up signing 8 guys who committed that weekend, but I think they actually got double-digit commitments that weekend because there were a few guys who committed but didn't sign. So they ended up with double digits, maybe 10 or 11 commitments that weekend. Pitt came out of this past weekend with 10. So you're talking about historic terms. I mean, this was an official visit weekend for the record books, but that doesn't mean we're closing the book on it. We're going to be talking about it a lot today and throughout the week. So let's dive into it. Pitt's recruiting class, the big official visit weekend, what the class looks like now with 9 new announced commitments in the group. And we got a lot of angles to go at this thing, whether it's talking about the wide receivers, talking about the Whippeal, talking about Texas, talking about all the different recruiting angles. So let's break it down. Big official visit weekend in the books. And we're talking about it here on the Morning Pit. YouTube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Even with something that's an almost lock, a near guarantee, you always have those moments of, even if it's small, you have a little moment of doubt. Even though we spent all week last week talking about how big this official visit weekend was going to be, we spent all this time writing about it and talking about it and podcasting about it and predicting it and all these different things about how many commitments they were going to get out of this official visit weekend. There's always that tiny little voice that says, what if they don't get any? And it's, intuitive. I mean, intellectually, it's not possible. They're going to get commitments. They're going to get a bunch of commitments, and it'll only be a letdown. The only conceivable letdown is if they only get 3 or 4 commitments. You knew they were going to get a bunch of guys, but there's still that little voice that says, what if they don't? Well, whatever doubts there were, whatever possibility that was, I think they were gone by Friday night because the commitments started rolling on Friday night and through the day on Saturday. And now if you go look at Pat Narduzzi's Twitter feed, there's 10 Pitt is it tweets that have been posted in the last 48 hours or so because Pitt got on a recruiting roll. This official visit weekend worked, and they, as I said in the open there, tripled the size of the recruiting class. What we always ask you to do here with the Morning Pit, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Like this video and subscribe to youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. That way you don't miss any of our Pit video content all day, every day of the week. Monday through Friday with these Morning Pit videos. We have our weekly live show every Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m. right here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. We have post-game shows and interviews and press conferences and all kinds of things right here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. So make sure you like this video and subscribe. And then don't forget to check out the website, Panther-Lair.com. It's the Pitt site on the 247 Sports Network. We have all the coverage of Pitt football, basketball, recruiting, transfer portal, all those things. And we provide the coverage and the content. You provide the community and the conversation on the message boards at Panther-Lair.com. It's a big part of the appeal is the message boards, and you want to be part of that conversation with other Pitt fans. I think it's the best online community of Pitt fans you're going to find. Panther-Lair.com. All right, let's dive into some recruiting news. The talk of the week, the big official visit weekend. I had to move it over to this side because it's a little bit easier for me to see here as opposed to when it was on the other side. Pitt came in with 5 commitments, and all 5 of those guys were here for official visits. Angelo Renda, the quarterback, the 2 wide receivers, Dylan Wester and Demetrius McCray, the linebacker Marcus Jennings, and the safety Isaac Patterson. They were all here for the official visit, so 22 guys visiting, 5 of them already committed to Pitt. That leaves 17 targets on the board, and you could do that math out of that. Pitt got 10 out of the 17. And I don't necessarily know if they're done with those other 7. I think they've still got fighting chance with a bunch of those guys. And, you could see it over the next couple weeks or into July. Sometimes guys take their official visits and take more visits, or they have something planned. Yeah, some of those guys might want to wait till July or something like that to announce their commitments. And that's, so you might get more of those other 7 guys. And so you might end up with more than 10 out of 17 committed. But that's where they're at right now. So the recruiting class overall stands with 15 recruits. Like I say, 14 of them have announced. There's one guy from the weekend that we're still waiting to hear from. But what did they get? How do they add to those 5 commitments? Well, there's a few different angles to go by. That we can look at. And I'm not going to go to the most obvious one first. I'm going to actually start with the offensive linemen, because Pitt got 3 offensive linemen to commit this weekend. They didn't have any offensive linemen committed in the class prior to this weekend, but they brought 3 linemen to campus for official visits, and they got every single one. One was Mike Vanderord. He's a big 6'7" tackle from Ohio. St. Ignatius in Cleveland. He's a guy who was formerly committed to Toledo, but he's he's strong. He can move really well. He's got, I think he had one other Power 4 offer out of Wake Forest, but I think schools are, I'm not sure what schools are looking at, to be quite honest here. I mean, this dude has the size and he moves really well. I mean, this is an ideal offensive tackle prospect. Again, we list him at 6'7", even if that's, an exaggeration like most heights and weights are, he's still a big dude. And I think this is a big pickup for Pitt to get Mike Vanderord. Another one was Nick Howard. He's a tackle from Texas, one of 2 guys from Texas who committed this weekend, bringing the total of 3 Texas recruits in Pitt's 2026 recruiting class. But Nick Howard is a 6'5" guy, projects as a tackle, could potentially play inside, but I think he'll probably be on the outside for Pitt's offensive line. And then the third one, and this is the one that will segue into our next big storyline with this recruiting weekend, is John Curran from Pine Richland. Now, he's a guy who took it. He actually was at Pitt's prospect camp last Sunday, did a really good job at that camp, impressed the coaches enough to get on their radar for a scholarship offer. That offer probably came midweek. He didn't really tweet about it or announce it until he got to campus for his official visit this weekend. But it was all sort of a done deal. I think Curran was locked up. He's a guard. He's more like that 6'3" size. He's a smaller interior lineman, but he's really good. I don't think he lost a rep during the prospect camp last weekend. I saw him there. He was winning reps all the time. Really impressed the coaching staff. Really impressed Pat Narduzzi, and got himself in for an offer. Got himself on campus for the official visit and committed. So you take a recruiting class that coming into the weekend had a quarterback, 2 receivers, a safety, and a linebacker, and you've already you add 3 offensive linemen to that group, and you are filling out the class nicely. Now, of course, the other thing with John Curran is he's a whippy old guy coming from Pine Richland. And that's the other big storyline from this weekend. There were 4 recruits from the Whippeal on official visits this weekend. 3 out of those 4 committed to Pitt. Curran is 1. Lincoln Hoke, the defensive tackle from North Allegheny, son of the former Pittsburgh Steeler Chris Hoke, and Restston Leman, the defensive end from Peters Township. And I think, as we look down this group, there's big commitments all over the place here. There's big targets who committed to Pitt. Leman is one of the biggest ones I think they've landed overall in the class. I mean, they have guys with nice offer sheets here, but Leman's a really interesting one, and I think so for a few reasons. One, primarily, obviously he's a defensive end prospect. He's a local guy. It's good to get local players, particularly positions where you need to really restock your foundation. But the thing that's intriguing about Restston Leman as a recruiting story is I think there was a while where it seemed like Pitt was his likely destination, where he was really leaning to Pitt. Pitt was considered the favorite. he was going to go to Pitt. I mean, it really sort of looked that way. But then things shifted. And all of a sudden, Rutgers seemed to be the school in the lead. And they seemed to be taking control of his recruitment and really taking that top spot and becoming the new favorite for Restston Leman. And that was disappointing to see. This WPIAL recruit who was really close with Pitt, who seemed really high on Pitt, was now leaning away and potentially leaning to Rutgers. Well, he took his official visit to Rutgers 2 weeks ago, the weekend before he went to Pitt, and did not commit. And that told me that the door was open. And then the more we asked around, it kind of turns out that not only was the door open, but it was heavily leaning back toward Pitt, largely through the efforts of the recruiting staff, the coaching staff overall and the recruiting department as well. But I mean, Pat Narduzzi, Tim Dowse, these guys working hard, really turning up the recruiting intensity with Restston Leman. And I think ultimately swinging him back to Pitt, which culminated with him committing over the weekend. I think Leman is a good defensive end prospect, obviously a WPIAL guy, like we said, which is huge. And then to win him back after seeming like they were falling out of it with him, I don't think you can overstate how important that is. I mean, anytime you can win that kind of a recruiting battle where the pendulum is swinging and you end up, coming out on the winning end and putting yourself back in the winning spot, that's big. But to do it with a local recruit, particularly after some of the things we've seen about Pitt and local recruiting over the past few years, or over the past few weeks, I should say, some of the stories that have come out, to see Pitt do that with a local recruit, I think is huge. I think it's big, and I think we'll be talking about this for a while because that's a big recruiting win. I like Lincoln Hoke, too, the defensive tackle. He's a little bit smaller, but I think he fits the mold of the defensive tackles that Pitt likes to have. Smaller guys that can get off the ball and make plays. He's obviously got a football pedigree coming from a football family, and I think he's going to be a really good player. And, again, getting another WPIAL guy, this one out of North Allegheny. So you get Pine Richland, you get North Allegheny, and you get Peters Township. And, of course, the fourth WPIAL player who was here on an official visit was Colson Gatton, the linebacker from Central Catholic. He did not commit, but I think Pitt did a good job with him, and I think they've been doing a good job with him for the past 3 months or so, really kind of giving themselves a chance. I don't know if they'll get him, but they've given themselves a chance, and the official visit weekend certainly didn't hurt. Moving on from the WPIAL guys, another guy I really like, Isaiah Simmons from Virginia. He's a linebacker. He had, by my count, now this is sometimes you watch you start reading about recruits and you go looking for stats, and high school stats, it's hit or miss, and that's probably being kind about it. You go to Max Preps, or you go to the school website, or you go wherever you can find it. Sometimes you'll find good stats. Some positions it's easier than others. Offensive skill guys, you have a better chance of finding out stats than maybe defensive guys or something like that. But it's hit or miss. And if the school doesn't upload any stats, doesn't put any stats into Max Preps, then you can't find anything. So I had to go to Isaiah Simmons' highlight film. And I'm watching his highlight film. It's like 8 or 9 minutes, and I'm counting every tackle for loss, sack, interception, whatever it is that he had. And by my count, just off his highlight film, and if there were tackles for loss or sacks they didn't put on his highlight film, you would add it on to this number. But by my count, off his highlight film, Isaiah Simmons had 24 tackles for loss, 10 sacks, 2 block punts, and a safety last season. This is Isaiah Simmons, I think, is an outstanding linebacker. And I'm really excited about Marcus Jennings, the other linebacker, the kid from Cass Tech in Detroit. But I think Jennings and Simmons are making a heck of a duo at linebacker in this recruiting class. Simmons was like an all-state player every year he's been in high school. He's been the team's leading tackler for multiple years. And again, 24 tackles for loss and 10 sacks. Sometimes plays inside linebacker, sometimes plays outside linebacker. I just think he's a stud. I think both of these guys, Marcus Jennings and Isaiah Simmons, I think are both really, really good linebacker prospects. And we talk about that position. I wrote about it in the 3-2-1 column about the linebacker position becoming a position of strength in recruiting. And I think, it's carrying over here. I think with Jeremiah Marcelin and Cam Lindsey 2 years ago, I think the guys they got this past year look pretty good. They don't necessarily have the offer sheets that Lindsey and Marcelin did, but I think Simmons and Jennings in this upcoming recruiting class really carrying on a tradition that they're building with linebackers of getting really good players, and I think these guys are going to carry that on. Wide receiver committed this weekend, Jaden Dunbar from Georgia. Now hold on to your hats, folks. He's 6'5". Pitt, the University of Pittsburgh football Panthers, with Cade Bell as offensive coordinator, recruiting a 6'5" wide receiver. What is going on? Dogs and cats living together. It's crazy. I can't believe it. 6'5" wide receiver. Looks really good too. Comes out of the state of Georgia, which is a good place to go for talent and quality prospects. And Jaden Dunbar committed over the weekend. He's a really good wide receiver, and now they've got 3 in this class, along with Dylan Wester and Demetrius McCray. Demetrius McCray, who was also on the official visit this weekend, might be one of the biggest sleepers in this class. I think he is an absolute stud, but he's not 6'5" like Jaden Dunbar. 2 other commitments, another offensive weapon, Wyatt Villarreal, a 6'5" tight end from Texas, and they've now gotten a couple of big tight ends in back-to-back classes. Max Hunt last year, Wyatt Villarreal this year. And then Kentrell McCray, a cornerback prospect from Florida. And, I mean, really, if I just say corner from Florida, Pitt recruited a corner from Florida, that should be all you really need to know, right? Like I could dig in and find out different data and information and stats and things on Kentrell McCray, but he's a cornerback from Florida who Pitt recruited. He's probably going to be good because they are pretty good at recruiting cornerbacks from Florida. So that's 9 guys. Again, there's one more commitment out there that has happened. We know it because of Pat Narduzzi's tweet, but we don't know who it is yet, or at least the recruit hasn't announced. We've discussed it on the message boards at Panther-Lair.com. You can go check it out, Panther-Lair.com. And if you're like, oh, Chris, that's on the message board, that's behind the paywall, I can't read it. Well, we got a good deal for you. 60% off. Like, 60% off. I bought paint over the weekend. It was 30% off. I thought I was getting a steal, or maybe 40%. We're giving you 60% off the best Pitt info you can find. So go take advantage of that deal right now at Panther-Lair.com and find out who we think that other commitment is, that 10th guy. And if it's already been announced by the time you watch this video, come get our thoughts on it. You'll see that we were talking about it yesterday. And then you also get our thoughts on everything else that's going on with this recruiting class, with these guys who committed, and with these upcoming visit weekends that will be here in the next few weeks. So big recruiting weekend, and I think it gave us a lot of storylines because we've got a lot to talk about this week. We're going to talk about the Whippeal. We're going to talk about some of the different recruiting positions, maybe this linebacker surge that's going on with Pitt recruiting, the house settlement, because oh, yeah. By the way, that happened on Friday night, the House settlement. The House versus NCAA case settlement was approved. What does that mean for Pitt? We're going to be talking about that this week and everything else going on in Pitt football, Pitt basketball, recruiting, transfer portal. We got a lot to talk about this week. I can't wait. I feel like we could do 5 episodes right now just on Monday, but we're going to space it out, keep you wanting more. So make sure you like this video and subscribe to youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. That way you don't miss any of our Pitt video content. And then head over to the website, Panther-Lair.com. Thanks so much for tuning in today. I really appreciate it. I hope you had a great weekend. Enjoy your Monday. Like and subscribe, and we'll catch up with you tomorrow for the Morning Pitt right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.